Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And today we are very fortunate to have a couple of people from Endeavor Hospice joining us today. And we are looking forward to learning all around this business and the magic behind it. So with that, please help me welcome Sandy Smith and Dave Rogers. I'm so grateful that they have easy names to pronounce since I forgot to ask for pronunciation. Didn't need to, obviously. Dave is the CEO and founder, and Sandy is an account executive. Welcome to Phoenix Business Radio.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
So happy to have you. And Sandy, it's been a while since you've been in the studio with us. I know you were on with us before the pandemic, I feel like. It's been a while.
I think I'm a startup junkie. Yeah. It's been about 6 years. 5 years.
And I've only been here for almost 7. So love having you back. And I'm so glad when we talked about having you on that we said, well, who does it make sense to have you, join you in the studio? And you thought to bring Dave. So either one of you can go first. I would love for you to introduce us to not only yourself, the role that you play for Endeavor Hospice, and then really how did you land in this role? And we've got up to an hour for the segment, so we're just going to see where this conversation takes us. Who'd like to start first?
I guess maybe I should take it with the story.
Perfect. Yeah, we love stories.
It's a bit of a story, but I'll try to make it as condensed as possible. As we say when I tell the story, long story short, I'm a Californian for 60 years. Had a wonderful experience of meeting a young lady at a motocross track when I was 18. Married that year at 18. Was racing professional motocross. Had an injury, then went into business development and marketing. We had a wonderful love story for 41 years. And after a 7-year battle of cancer, she passed away in my arms in 2013. We have a strong faith in eternity. We know this life's just a nanosecond of the eternal life. And I felt I would see her soon. But surprisingly, they call it grief, heartache, was a lot more severe than I expected. But another miracle happened in our lives, and we do believe in miracles at Endeavor. We're full of them, or we've had plenty of them. We've been blessed with them. Was that a good friend was over here in Arizona, and I came over to visit my dad, who was battling cancer. And while I was over here, this dear friend on a call one night talking about this pain I was feeling said, "Oh, Dave, I'm sorry. I should have done this earlier, but you got to meet my best friend, Nancy." And I said, "No, I'm fine. I got plenty to do. My wife left me with 6 kids and 12 grandkids. As a grandparent, we have to take responsibility for that role." And so I had my plans, I thought. Mm-hmm. With that said, this Nancy lady and I connected on a Saturday night, and 4.5 hours later, it was quite odd. We hung up the phone, and literally I looked at the phone and up at the roof and said, "I have to do this again, guys."
Oh, boy.
It gets better. It was so comfortable, as she says. It was so natural. It's obviously, you hear that we're a match made in heaven, or intuitively we've known each other before, which I believe. And we talked for a week. We came up with deal breakers, tried to find something wrong with this commonality that we felt, this attraction we felt. I'm only a few months out of my wife leaving this world. Everybody's grieving, my kids, my grandkids, all her friends. Come to find out she was a phenomenal mentor or confidant for so many people. She had like 60 friends that relied on her for trust and words of wisdom and humor and wit, which she was full of. So it was down to the face-to-face for Nancy and I. After talking for a week, I drove over from California. She's here in Mesa. We open the door. We start laughing. What are we going to do now? Mm-hmm. We were married 20 days after that first phone call.
Oh, my gosh.
Different, for sure, after being with the same person for 41 years, from 18 on. But I can't imagine it being any better. This friend said that Nancy was such a match because I have a Down syndrome. My number 6 child's a full care Down syndrome. And she knew that Becca needed a mom. And as she joked, I could have the fringe benefits. Well, after 10 years, I could say it's better than I ever would have expected. She's fit right into my family of my kids. She has 4 kids. So collectively, I have 6, she has 4, we have 10. Today, the grandkid count is up to 27.
Only 27.
Yeah. And 1 great.
Oh, gosh.
With all that said, that leads into why we're here today. I come from a operational background. After my pro motocross career, I started running companies. The only one anyone would probably know is a company called Oakley. A good friend of mine, Jim, founded Oakley. He was struggling in the early 80s, and I launched him into the sunglass business. The rest is history.
Wow.
And I went on to do other companies and consulting, and then settled down in 2000 doing mergers and acquisitions. So that was my heart. You know, I ran companies, I built companies, I helped companies. Then I settled into the M&A world, which is where a lot of companies end up at. A lot of people build their company to sell it.
Mhm.
Well, after being over here for a few months and getting over the heartache, it took about 9 months for me, which is a blessing. Many people are challenged with it for years. I had my second caregiving experience with my father, who was here battling cancer, which is why I came over here in the first place. So my wife being my first caregiving experience, down to the last drops in the mouth and some very, very tender moments, to my dad, virtually the same thing. His stories were a little bit different. We brought him home after treatment was no longer going to be productive, set him up in his hospital bed in the living room, looking at the golf course, superstitions, and watched movies. The joke with him was that all the movies I brought over to watch always had someone dying. Steel Magnolia, great movie, a lot of humor, but somebody dies. And he'd say, Dave, really another death movie? And I said, well, Dad, you're going to be there soon. Might as well laugh it off, you know? So he passed in August of 14. And then we took over care of Nancy's mother, who was a dementia victim. She was up in Utah, and the story starts to connect here. We brought her down from Utah. I was challenged with finding her a memory care. I really had very little experience inside of senior communities, but I did my, quote, due diligence on senior communities. Found one. We put her in Legacy here in Mission Mesa. Nurse Trudy, if you're listening, Trudy, you were golden, challenging, but golden. And there were 7 women in my mother-in-law, Mary Beth's space. And I fell in love with them. They all had their stories. They were flirts. I even had a Mrs. Rogers in there. I nicknamed some of them Doris Day, Greta Garbo. And it was in November of 14, now over a year after my wife passing, that Nancy was talking to her mom. I'm talking to the 6 crazies, I call them, that we just looked at each other and smiled that we needed to do something to help people through this point in their life. Endeavor was launched in March of 2015 as a startup. Most home care agencies, this is senior in-home care, non-medical in-home care, are franchises. Franchise life is good if you don't know what you're doing, if you've never started a company or built a company. A lot of times there is brand value and equity. And a good friend of mine had launched a home care agency and was franchising it. And we talked, and he wanted me to take Arizona. And I had my Excel spreadsheet planned out for 5 years of growth. And I said to this individual that I love you, but I don't think you're ever going to be worth the money I'm going to be paying you every year in royalties. So we started from scratch. So let's say at that point in time, after going up the ladder through companies, launching companies, growing companies, Oakley being a great example, and then doing mergers, sitting in a boardroom, meeting with people, buying companies. We rolled up quite a few large companies, probably over $1 billion worth of companies I was involved with. Now I'm starting a home care agency. We acquired 8 caregivers and 8 clients day one. One of them was my mother. And from that, we grew. We didn't grow as fast as I wanted to. So in 2018, we acquired another company, home care agency, and became one of the larger ones in the Phoenix area, Endeavor Home Care. And then we acquired another one, and then we acquired a school, and I'm fast tracking now. And then 20 hit. And 20 was a historic moment for all of us. Many of us seem to have already forgotten, but if you think back of that day when you turned on the TV and Milan, Paris, London, Times Square, Vegas, LA were empty.
Mm-hmm.
They were going across the TV. I'll never forget it. All the cities were empty. So what were we heading into? We didn't know. Our home care business is private pay, or you have long-term care insurance. Private pay has been affected by inflation drastically. Our bill rates, what we have to charge these days, is almost double what they were in 2015. You could say there's no inflation, but there's been a lot of inflation in the last 9-10 years. With that said, we launched another division. We call it the Becca division, but we launched a DDD division for special need individuals. It's called Endeavor HCBS. Endeavor HCBS is a Medicaid program. Services are paid for by the state. You get on DDD services through the state, Department of Developmentally Disabled. They qualify your disabled child or adult for services, and then they place you with an agency like Endeavor. Well, today we employ hundreds and help hundreds and hundreds of people with that division. It is a true blessing of serving others in a humble way. Autistics, Downs, physical handicaps. Nancy and I, every morning and every night, just are in awe at the amount of people that we're helping every day. We're a paid service project, we call. So a year and a half ago, almost, November of 2022, my son, who works with us as business development marketer, Sandy works with him, came to me and said, "Dad, isn't it time for hospice?" And we looked at each other and I said, "Really? Things are just getting comfortable." We were really on a nice plane, growing trajectory was nice. Everything was really good. But hospice was what we wanted to help people through. We wanted to help people feel the dignity and respect and love that comes from that tender moment. To me, we had 6 of our kids at home. I would say that having someone leave this world in front of you in your arms or being there is more immaculate than the birth of a child, because that life is much greater than the life we have here. With all that said, we were connected with some great people in the hospice industry. One of our very good friends had sold their hospice company, and we were witness firsthand to what happens when private equity comes in. And that company suffered drastically, to the dismay of the people that sold it. So we wanted to learn from them, learn what we had learned, and we created Endeavor Hospice, and we went live basically in April, a year ago last year. And today we employ somewhere around 600 people, all in with the 3 companies. We pay weekly, which most people don't do, especially if it's a Medicaid service. We pay our providers, they're called, weekly, and our caregivers and our nurses. And we have a culture that is down to the motto that we have, that once you're with Endeavor, you're family forever. So that's kind of our short story. Today, we can talk about hospice, but we can also talk about anything else you want to.
I sure love that, the full story. There's always a driver for why we get into business most often, right? And it's something that happens in our life or some influence. So thank you for sharing that. And loss is challenging. Yeah, I've come out of 5 years just recently since my then husband attempted suicide, and it's taken me a long time to get myself back to where I'm fully functional and ready to love again and excited about life. And it's required a lot of me. So I know heartache and I know it well. And like you, I've been someone who's spoken very frequently about it. So thank you for sharing that with us. So Sandy, how did you join the team? Like, it just made sense. Did you know his son ahead of time?
I did. I was dabbling in home care, right? And I just liked Chris. Yeah. He was a stand-up guy. He had great follow-through and execution, and very honest, very quiet, which I'm not. So some moments were uncomfortable, and I would only send my patients to him. And I was working at a hospital, and he was hiring for hospice. And I said, "Let me refer you to someone." And he goes, "What about you?" And I said, no, I don't know. No, I'm already sad doing what I do now. He's like, well, come over and meet my dad and meet the COO and meet our director of nursing. And I said, okay. And so I went on over there, and at the time, and Dave fully knows, I was pretty transparent. I had another job offer for another startup, and I love startups. And I said, well, I don't know. And Dave was very persistent. And before I left, I had an offer letter in my email.
Oh, I love that.
And I did not accept. I still had to wait. I wanted to pray on it. And I went home, and my son Roman actually got a piece of paper because I was really unsure. I didn't want to make a choice. I wanted to work with people that I really respected. And I wanted to find a long-term home. I wanted to find a last gig. And I wanted to work with people that actually gave a darn, right? End of life. My mom died March 10th, 1988 at 10:56 in my arms. I was heartbroken. 9 years of therapy. Thought I did something wrong. And I never thought of hospice. I thought it would be sad. And going back, I prayed about it. And I think God is going to use me to bless other people in their last chapter of their life. So that's what I did. And I work with people that actually wake up and I want to go to work. It hasn't happened to me in a long time for that. So I was very appreciative.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your role then with Endeavor Hospice is what? You're an account
Executive, right.
And what does that mean?
That means I go to skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, nursing homes, PCPs. And if they find that there's a patient that is at their end of life, there's no other treatment. There's Medicare guidelines that we have to abide by.
Mm-hmm.
I build relationships, and hopefully they'll entrust their patients with me, because it's not just about the patient. Invariably, there's going to be the family. And I'm very new to hospice, but I have a lot of relationships out there, and they trust me.
Well, you're not new to relationships, or not
I'm
new
not.
to caring for people. It's an easy shift, I would imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really care about people. And I think for me, God calls us to take care of those that can't take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it all the time, right? But I try to.
Yeah.
I try to live by the golden rule.
The other thing I would say is
Yes.
that it's not my saying, of course, but God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called. So you know
Indeed.
people. You've said, "I'm here to serve," and so obviously Dave and the rest of the crew are going to continue to help you learn, so that
Absolutely.
you are fully qualified. I have no doubt you already are. So this has been how long that you've been part of the team?
2 months.
Oh my gosh, brand spanking new.
Brand spanking
and
new.
you knew, she knew. Come. Let's have a conversation with Karen on air.
We know when we meet someone if they're the personality, the people person, and they have the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what division we're talking about, be it hospice or HCBS with DDD services or home care or some of the things that are on our long run game now. Sandy just fit it. Chris spotted her. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. And when you tell the Rogers no, we kind of smile. We get excited at the opportunity to overcome that no and educate people and help people. Because a lot of times people don't know they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And with hospice, it's an interesting one because so many people think hospice is short term. And the key point that we could share today is that hospice is not short term. The earlier you get lined up with hospice, if you are heading down a medical challenge life, if you think you're not just going to go to sleep one day and die, that whatever you're challenged with is going to possibly take you, you should connect with a hospice company. We have a palliative care program, which is like a waiting list. You get a nurse visit once a month. You're on the roster. All the paperwork's done, whatever. If you ever cross that threshold, like I did with my wife, after 7 years of battling, got to call on a Saturday morning. Our number 5 daughter was having her baby shower. My wife knew she was going to leave this world, but she wanted to stay for that baby to come. The doctor called and says, it's time to take her home. There's no more we can do. The guys above must really want her because we were in California. Life was good, and we did have the best doctors money could buy, and we were at the City of Hope over there at the end. So we took her back to Big Bear, and we had an incredible 2 weeks. But the caring factor, the level of compassion, empathy that I left that town with, because we shut down our house there and moved over here to start a new chapter in life, is really what everyone in our company has. Our vetting process for hiring people is we ask everyone, have you been home care, HCBS, have you been with someone at their last breath? And if they haven't, on the home care side, we always ask them if they're willing to be on a hospice case, because it's not for everyone. It's challenging. And if they haven't and they're willing, we get them on a hospice case. But the beauty of hospice, like my mother-in-law, Mary Beth, she was on hospice for over 2 years. And most people don't realize that.
No, I would not have thought that.
And when you're on full hospice, you get a nurse visit on a regular basis. Our model is quite a bit different. We can talk about that later, but
Let's talk about it now, because I really am left very curious. Everything that you both have shared speaks so loudly and comfortably to the kind of people that I would want to entrust my family members to, or if someone's making these decisions for me. So what does make, I mean, you've already shared a great deal. Let's talk about how you're different. What are you doing that's different? And what are some of the expectations that people might be surprised by that are this is just how we do it?
good news, bad news. Good news is, we'll talk about it in a minute. The bad news is we're only servicing the East Valley.
Okay.
The reason for that is we are an over-servicing hospice company. Medicare requires hospice companies to visit the patient with an RN once every 2 weeks. Most hospice companies will subscribe to that because that helps feed the bottom line. They spread out the expense of a high dollar RN out as thin as they can. Our model is our nurses start out visiting the family or the patient twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, we end up in multiple visits a week. Our CNAs, Medicare requires 2 visits a week, 15-minute visit, hour visit, whatever it might be. We have them go often, at least 3, if not 5 times a week.
Wow.
Our medical doctor, which most hospice patients on this call or with any experience will say they didn't know their medical doctor at hospice. He was someone the nurse talked to okay the prescriptions. We believe that a doctor should be involved from the get-go, so we try to have our medical directors face-to-face with the patient first few weeks of service, and then we'll be there at the end face-to-face if the family wants us there. So that's the differentiator. More care, more service, medical doctor involved. Almost no one does that. I think it's part of the reason Sandy joined us.
That was important to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want it just to have a job, right? I wanted it to have meaning and passion and making a difference.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a word to use, but I'm thinking of concierge service when you're describing what you're doing, right? This is really high touch, high care, and very heavily involved for the duration that's needed. And I hear you suggesting that you decide which hospice you're going with well before it's needed.
You should.
Yeah. And
Most
I've
people
never
don't.
heard that. No, I've never heard that.
Most
advice.
people like me,
Mm-hmm.
we'd gone through 7 years of battling it, never had the discussion about hospice. We get to call in that Saturday morning of my one of our favorite daughter's baby shower, and we got to take my wife home. Treatment's over, and you should call hospice. What's hospice?
Yep.
Yeah.
So had we had hospice involved earlier, it would have been a great help because my wife unfortunately suffered for serious pain. And hospice is there to help keep you comfortable, help you with pain management, help you with any other ailments. And when you go on hospice, we take care of virtually everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole nother.
Yeah, well, let's stay there.
Stay
What
there.
are the other services then? I mean, what support, not services, but what support do you provide? You mentioned, so helping dispensing of medicine.
2 phases. If you come to us early on and you think I may need hospice in the near future, what is this palliative care that you have? Palliative care is we offer you a nurse visit once a month. It's a service that we do out of our own pocket. Medicare does, or CMS doesn't repay us for this service. We have chaplains and social workers on board. You can have them visit as needed once a month. So it's a precursor to kind of coach you through this road to going on hospice. Once you go on hospice, you basically have to not be treating any terminal illness. You have to say, okay, I've done all I can do. It's time to start planning for my exit. some people, like my mother-in-law, Mary Beth, she was taking no medicine, but she was declining. She had severe dementia, so she wasn't really herself. She was losing weight. Qualifier for her was strictly the weight loss. As long as she continued to lose weight, she could still stay on hospice. There always has to be a diagnosis, be it a terminal cardiac condition, some other condition. But once you go on hospice, we supply virtually everything. Part of the compensation we get from Medicare is to cover all expenses. We prescribe all the pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm.
We supply all the durable medical equipment, DME, the beds,
Mm-hmm.
any other equipment you need in the home. We supply all the supplies, the briefs, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
and all the staff to support you. So there virtually is no cost when you go on hospice, and Medicare covers it.
Hmm.
So it's free.
I would like to add, I haven't experienced it with Dave yet, but other people have experienced it, that if there's something that insurance doesn't pay for and the patient needs, Dave says yes.
Mm-hmm.
The qualifier for Medicare hospice is 65 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one caveat.
Mm-hmm.
Most hospice patients are in that range. Once in a while, you have someone younger. We don't take regular insurances hospice coverage yet, but as an industry as a whole, it's down into single digits, like 2 to 5% maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people are under 65. So
One thing also to point out, I don't know if you know this, Karen, but in Arizona, there's 10,000 seniors that turn 65 every week. We're outgrowing Florida.
Yes.
So we're having a senior tsunami,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a big need for help.
Yeah.
Quality, caring help.
What is the difference between having Endeavor on board or hiring a private caregiver? Is there a difference?
two different things.
Mhm. Okay.
Home care, let's call that,
Mhm.
a private caregiver or a home care agency, we go hand in hand with them, is a key part. Most people have family that can move in, that come in to take with the activities, to help with the activities of daily living. A home care agency, as we start to decline, our average client's trend will come on board with 4-hour shifts 3 days a week, 4 hours of shifts 5 days a week, 8-hour shifts 7 days a week, all the way up to we offer 24/7 care in the home to help someone through this point. Many kids want their parents to have the best of the best. And we've had kids bring our home care agency on to help people 24/7 because both parents were struggling with multiple different issues. They had 24/7 caregivers, which we normally do in 2 split 12s. So 2 caregivers per day in AM and PM. They had caregivers for both mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
Mom goes to the hospital, they have her caregivers go with them. So home care or private caregivers, be them family, I have talked myself out of a lot of good work because the first thing I'll try to do is ask someone what kind of family they have. You can make a schedule for who should help mom and dad, take one of the family members, have them be the scheduler, fill all the shifts that mom and dad need, be them 4-hour shifts, be them 24/7. And if you can't fill a shift, you call Endeavor and we send in a caregiver. Private caregivers are out there. They're plentiful. The risk with a private caregiver is they are uninsured. Home care in the state of Arizona is unlicensed. So many will say there's no difference. Endeavor happens to belong to the Home Care Association of America, the state organization, ASNAHA, the Arizona Home Care Association. And we operate as if we were in a licensed state. We are one of the few home care companies, I think, that drug test every single applicant. We are bonded and insured, and we go on and we have our own training program. We certify our caregivers based on different levels of capabilities. We have advanced dementia care on the home care side, and it goes on and on. The private caregiver is usually going to be a soloist or a couple. If they get sick, there's no backup for them.
Right.
If you have an issue in the home, there's no insurance involved. And then you have the liability of employing someone privately, which
Mhm.
you can step over the line there.
So whether it's a caregiver like that, or in the case of hospice, are they considered non-medical caregivers?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm hearing you say they don't have to be licensed and bonded. However, if somebody is with Endeavor, that your team is.
We are just like if you were in the 30 states that are licensed.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and
Very high standards.
yeah, hopefully home care will get licensed in this state. If any of our conservatives are listening, many say that won't happen, and I can side with that side as well. But the reality is that Medicare isn't going to truly embrace home care until all 50 states are licensed. And COVID was an eye-opener for Medicare and the whole healthcare industry of how valuable home care entities can be. And there's a lot of talk and legislation moving forward to get home care accepted in all 50 states and paid for by Medicare. That would be the happy day.
Mm-hmm.
So
We even have patients say they're at independent living facilities or assisted living facilities, right? They don't have family here. So they need help, whether it be, someone to talk to, daily grocery shopping, walking, exercises. There's a whole host that the non-medical side can care for our aging population.
Mm-hmm.
the caregiver, the home caregiver, private or with Endeavor, basically there is to duplicate what a daughter or son would do, or a spouse, when they aren't available.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a service called Care Now, kind of a fourth entity. Care Now is an on-demand pickup and transport service. Most home care companies have a 4-hour minimum, like we do on our home care, our long-term home care side. But our number one call that all my friends in the home care industry get is, well, I just need someone for an hour. I just need someone to give me a shower. I just need a ride to the store to get some food. They're a single woman living in her home alone, and she needs some help. So we launched Endeavor Care Now, which is an on-demand services. We have Endeavor cars out and about. We do 1 to 3 hour shifts, and it's taking off like gangbusters.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. So.
And is it strictly for Endeavor folks who are already in the Endeavor system?
Nope, this is actually how they get in. You could call the Care Now almost like palliative care for
Mm-hmm.
hospice. Care Now is for home care. We run 6 days a week, 7 to 7. We have cars in Scottsdale, cars in Mesa. We're not fully metro wide yet, but we will be.
Yeah. What is the best way for kind of taking it out a little bit further than just Endeavor? If you were to give someone advice as they are selecting hospice care, what should I be looking for? Like, what's my checklist?
First off, I'd say the depth of the company, the mission of the company. First, her words in our mission statement is to serve. A lot of hospice companies in this state, forgive me, but they are being built to be sold.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the dollar. And when the dollar is involved, services are leaned out. So ask someone how long they've been in business. How long do they plan to be in business? We didn't touch on it. We don't broadcast it a lot. At least I don't. But we made a decision in 22 when we really were planning to sell that we were going to keep the company forever. We have a second generation already in with our director of operations son-in-law, my son, director of business development, and we have a lot of other people who aren't family that are like family. My wife, Nancy, and I will be gone, and somewhere in the next 30 years, I think I'm going to live to be 100, but time will tell. But even if I'm not, the company will either convert into a nonprofit, so it perpetuates itself, or it will turn into an ESOP owned by the employees. But it won't be sold.
Mm-hmm.
This is our plan today.
I love hearing that.
So.
And as you're sharing some of the things that we ought to be looking for and how that specifically applies to the community and the family that you've created, I know when I am in need of service, I'm going to ask somebody who's close to me, right? If I've known someone has
Referrals.
Right, referrals. So do you find that people, hey, I was referred by so-and-so, and does that make a difference when they already have somebody who's singing your praises?
It's number one. Wouldn't you say?
I absolutely ask the people that have used our services. Everybody out there, whatever service you are, can say and do whatever they want, but it speaks volumes, integrity, that we actually walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great referral. Our families, oftentimes, when they pass, they ask us to be part of the funeral services.
That speaks volumes.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Today, a family texted into one of our RNs in hospice and said, who their parent just passed away yesterday morning. Thank you so much for this, for all you have done to help us. Our family is, of course, crushed by the compassion and professionalism of the Endeavor family throughout. Dad's journey has made it more, Dad's journey has been made more breathable thanks to all of you.
Gosh, within just a day of his passing.
We get these daily.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
We lose people daily.
Yeah, of course.
It's part of the business. But our team, our chaplain, our nurses, our admin staff, they're all about helping the person, whatever it takes. We responded to a call Saturday night, happened to be a personal friend. He was 99 years old. He's going to turn 100 in April. The family was preparing this big birthday party for him.
Yeah.
He's a cowboy from Minnesota. They had been taking care of him, and they called, and I said, we need to get hospice over there right away. And they said, yeah, we think so. They've been taking care of him all the way along. No medicine, no nothing, but he was now failing. And if you have someone pass away in your house like that, it can cause a lot of issues if you aren't set up with a hospice. We were there within, I think, less than an hour. Try getting that kind of service out of a lot of other hospice companies. You won't. So to answer your question, there's a lot of good hospice companies in the area, but Arizona's been flooded with a lot of build it to sell it. In 18, we had 260, don't quote me exactly, but 260 hospice companies. Today, we have over 600.
Oh, gosh.
We are actually CMS has found this trend going nationwide, particularly in Florida, Texas, California, and Arizona. And they are actually mandating now that hospices can't be sold within 36 months from a startup. So you got to keep it at least 3 years. They have shut down any new hospices in California. We should do the same in Arizona. And a lot of them are disappearing. So
this might sound like a naive question to make sure, though, I understand why you're saying that. They're doing that because it's taken the compassion, the respect, and the humanity out of it, because it's just a cash machine. So this is right. So this is a way in which we can kind of regulate.
Private equity is always out there, and there's plenty of money in the world for good opportunities.
Yeah.
You can spin hospice as a great opportunity because of the silver tsunami,
right?
And on and on and on. And a lot of private equity guys are just hungry for a deal. They got to put their money to work strategically. When you're big in the healthcare industry or any industry, one way you grow when things get tough is you do acquisitions. So,
right. And so for our listeners and our viewers and myself, just thinking about when I will have the need for hospice, sometimes these doing it to sell have also deep pockets for marketing. And so it might be a name that we see a lot. And when the time comes, we're going to like, well, I've seen this name around, and I might just make the decision. But what I hear both of you saying is do your research. You did it. Make sure that you are, considering the person that you are caring for, and that you want to have that same level of care that I might not be able to do as a working parent.
There are some good companies in this area.
Sure.
I mean, everyone's going to say HOV, Hospice of the Valley. She's going, why am I saying HOV? Because they're a great company. They were in the big hospice in the beginning when it came about in the 80s.
Indeed.
They're here today. They're not for profit, but that isn't what everyone thinks. They make a profit. They just reinvest it. But they don't give the level of care we get. And they may cringe at me for saying that, but I love them, and we work hand in hand on our home care with them, and we refer to them outside of our area of hospice. So, but Sandy's point was right. Your best referral usually comes from your doctor or someone you know. And most doctors, most PCPs are straight up. The thing you have to look out for in hospice is if you're in the hospital, there's a lot of, every hospital right now probably has a handful of hospice reps sitting out in the lobby waiting for a new patient to show up. And once they hear that someone on so-and-so is getting turned over to hospice, some of the stuff they do is really challenging to get that person on their services.
A lot of, in some companies I can't name, but are out of business because they pay for referrals.
Oh,
So we're very, very strict on what we spend our money on, right? We don't want to be looked upon as bribing or influencing others through gifts or what have you. I go out there and market per se of education of what Endeavor does.
mhm.
And it's proven very well. In fact, on my business card, it's a kind of a catchphrase, but I tell all my doctors and case managers, my cell number is on my business card for a reason. I don't work 8 to 5. I'm going to have my safe space because I have a family too. I'm a very busy person, but unless I'm praising Jesus, call me. And if I can't help you, I'll find someone to help you because it's about the patient. And I
Mhm.
think you would agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we have many people call that are outside the area, they've heard about us, and
Yeah.
we refer them to one of our sister companies, so to speak, in the area that we do work hand in hand with.
Mhm.
It's a tight industry. The good ones are out there, and there's a few of us, quite a few of us probably, but
Hmm.
no one I think does the level of care that we do. And please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. So
Right. I don't think anybody is going to have the space to do that. You had mentioned when you were talking about all of the companies that are kind of centered around wellness and caring for a family and caregiving. You had talked about a little bit about your philosophy and how, especially with your employees, once they're with you, they're family.
forever.
and we want you forever. Is there a end of life philosophy as well that Endeavor functions with, or is that it? Is there more to that? Like when,
Explain your question.
well, go ahead.
So if I heard you correctly, when someone passes, we actually have a program we don't get paid for, but we stay with the family for an entire year.
Oh, wow. That is not what I was asking, but I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm just going back. So I
Yeah.
love that. I want to talk
Sure.
to that's amazing.
Yeah.
I just was asking that question, Dave, because you really talked about, right, pouring your heart and your passion, you and your wife, into not only the experiences that you had, the good, and then if there's some areas that haven't been great, you've built decisions around that to make sure that Endeavor is not that. And so when we're talking about specifically with hospice care and end of life, I was just curious as to what that is. So that's a even greater answer than what I would have expected. Tell us about that. So when you're there, you're with the family for a year after someone has passed. What? That's
Well,
phenomenal.
they're grieving. So we
Yes.
want to check in on them. And we have a chaplain, as Dave brought up, and we check in on them. I don't know the exact details. I think it's every other
No.
month, or they call.
It's as needed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know as we go through the leaving this world, how the family is going to deal with it. And we stay close to them and make sure that we can help them.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if we can help them, then they will share our ability with others. It's kind of a two-way street.
It's really hard to navigate that on your own, even if you have family and neighbors and a community that cares. When you are that partner, or you are that parent, or you are the child of a parent, you feel like you're alone.
I think the flip side of that is, I would say we spend a lot of our time not doing medical care as we do spiritual support. We have many people who, for no fault of their own, end up having no faith in eternity. Life ends at death.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the number of times that has changed in the last few weeks of being on hospice and watching their loved one leave this world, let alone the patient themselves. But our nurses will tell you, first thing we try to evaluate when someone calls us on hospice is, are they hospice ready?
Mm-hmm.
They understand that this means that sooner or later you are going to be crossing that veil.
Mm-hmm.
And if they aren't, we spend a lot of time coaching them and talking to them about it. We have booklets, we have educational materials, and we spend a lot of time on that, almost more so than post. So
to add, you never know when you're going to go. It could be 3 a.m, 4 a.m. We actually answer the phone and we go to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's impressive.
we have triage or on-call nurses 7 days a week, 24/7. Again, we over-service our patients
Yeah.
and their families.
And as evidenced by how quickly your group of Endeavor services have grown. Yeah. super impressive. Sandy, you were smart to bring Dave with you. I love it. And your son's name again that was smart
Is
enough to bring
Chris.
Chris. Shout out to
Rogers.
Chris. I
Yeah.
love it. I'm super impressed with both of you, and of course the level of care that you share with our families and our communities here in the East Valley. You mentioned at the beginning of the segment, dignity, respect, and love is really what is Endeavor has been founded on, and that's very evident in the way in which both of you serve. So, greatly appreciate our time together. How can folks stay in touch with you and learn more? And are you both on LinkedIn?
You know I'm on
I know
LinkedIn.
you
That's
are.
how I found you, Karen.
Right?
Yes, and my cell is 480-529-4361. The company's direct
We have
number.
multiple web pages, but if you go to endeavorhomecare.com, you
Mhm.
can be linked to all of them.
Yep.
You can go to endeavorhospice.com, be linked to all of them. You can go to endeavorhcbs.com.
Just put in the word Endeavor.
Yes.
And we will show up. We have multiple offices.
Yeah.
Hospice only works out of our headquarters in Mesa.
Mhm.
We have DDD services and home care in Phoenix and North Phoenix, Scottsdale. And we have an office in Prescott. So we have 4 large main offices, and we have satellite offices too. So we're kind of all over. But I just wanted to clarify, hospice is only in the East Valley.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Everything
for that,
else is all over the metro area up to Prescott.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Are there any vendors or partners that you sometimes lay awake in bed at night thinking, gosh, we could really use a good so-and-so, or is there any, since we're Business Radio X, right? Most of our listeners are business owners and executive leaders. Is there any vendor or power partner that you might be looking for that we could help introduce you to?
The best, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
and we have a few minutes. Let me just backstep on one point.
Mm-hmm.
One of Miss fantasies that daughters, our normal target customer is a 55-year-old daughter trying to help mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the demographic of our customer base. And they often think they can move mom and dad, they can sell the house, they can move mom and dad into one of our incredible senior living communities. They are incredible, but they don't give you all that you think they get. You don't get the 24-hour hands-on care like you would with a home care company. A lot of our hospice clients are in independent or assisted living facilities because they don't offer the hospice services either. So everyone does their homework before they send mom and dad down a road. And sometimes people thrive in senior living communities. It's a cruise ship. They have a blast. Sometimes they fail, like everyone's given up on them.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful of that.
So one of the questions to ask is, what services am I not going to get here that I also need to be aware of?
It's a concierge menu. They have it all to a point, but they charge you.
So be aware. Yeah.
Be aware of that.
Yeah.
And I lost my point I was going to make. Is this allowed on camera to lose a point?
You are allowed, boy. If not, I'm in trouble.
And I'm not the first.
No, I do it every day, and I own the studio. So you're welcome to good company.
Even right now, my dad is almost 90. He wants to live to be a centurion.
Oh.
And there's 6 of us and 20 something grandkids. And we're doing the shift like Dave was expressing before. And there's only so much capacity even us kids can have. So this is where this is quite golden.
Mm-hmm.
The point. Good news is we early on in our home care history, we had cognitive lectures going on around the area, educating people about Alzheimer's and dementia, because when I moved over here after my wife, very few people knew what it was. It's a fairly new disease as far as recognition. As we age older, it's becoming more predominant. Mm-hmm. Our cognitive expert, and if you're out there, was a great guy named Brian Brown. He was working with Banner Alzheimer's Research, and he educated us, right or wrong, I still believe in it as I get older, that when we lose a memory, like I just did a minute ago, if it comes back to you in a few minutes, few hours, or even a day, you don't have dementia. It's just a senior moment, an elusive memory, as long as you remember it sooner or later. But he also added to that, if you find your keys in the freezer, when you can't find them, it might be the beginning. So there's 2 sides to that.
That helps me with the distinction in my own life. Thank you very much.
All of us.
All right.
So to answer the question, who would we most look for to partner with or help with? I think it would be the PCPs, the medical oncologists, the doctors that are really looking for the best aftercare that they've given their patient through months or years or a whole life as a PCP, for the best care they can refer their patient to.
Mm-hmm.
Our golden contact is a PCP that refers to as a medical oncologist, a SNF,
Yes.
medical director at a SNF. If they're really looking for the best of the best for their patients, then give us a try. We might impress.
Well, no doubt. Not just a maybe, it's a for sure. Well, I really appreciate, obviously, the introduction to Dave and Endeavor Hospice and the whole Endeavor family. Much to learn here. We'll have the show notes with the video as well as the podcast on all the major platforms once we have it published. And one more time, the websites again, we have EndeavorHomeCare.com and
EndeavorHospice.com.
and then whichever ones else you're looking
you can
for.
find them from there. And
Yes.
I love
our
it.
phone number
Yes.
for all of them is 480-498-2324.
Mm-hmm.
That will get you to all the companies.
Yeah, and also on LinkedIn as Endeavor Hospice, and then Facebook too.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah, Endeavor Hospice. Well, again, thank you both for being here. Appreciate your time and your commitment to, of course, caring for our families and giving back in the way that you do. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live on Mac 6 campus right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. Some media lean left and some lean right. We lean Endeavor. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you.